This episode is brought to you by my wonderful supporter on Patreon. Stay tuned until the end for an important announcement regarding Quad D. Synopsis. We start off with a scene straight out of an action thriller as two suits are cornering a guy on a rooftop trying to get something valuable from him. Said item appears to be a Duel Monsters card that was apparently given to him by his deceased father for some reason, despite it being a relatively new fad. And the suits promptly beat the crap out of him and take the card from him at the command of their master, a young man with suspiciously rule-screwing green hair. With their conquest complete, he and his goons then leave in order to find more cards elsewhere. I'm sure that's all safe and fine and good, though. We then cut back to Domino High, where Yugi is showing off his own Duel Monsters cards to his friends, explaining how the game is starting to pick up in popularity. Anzu seems rather interested in hearing how the game works, but Jonuchi seems a bit less so. Is anyone gonna tell him? Well, it seems like Honda's going to do my job for me by taunting Jonuchi for being too simple-minded to grasp the game, which honestly is a bit fair. He's also decided that his janitorial duties extend to security protection, not unlike a certain bushy-browed jackass from earlier. So he vows to try to protect the cards from others wanting to steal them. Anzu seems skeptical, but Yugi confirms that this is a valid concern, as there are several people who would go through extreme lengths to get the rarest of cards. This apparently flips a switch in Honda, and, well, this happens. Besides, if I don't do something here, I won't get any screen time this episode, and what would happen to my character if I was just stuck on the sidelines for every episode? Future reality warping aside, the teacher then shows up and introduces their newest transfer student, Seto Kaiba, the heir to the top-class amusement company, the Kaiba Corporation. Most everyone is impressed, but Jonuchi takes an immediate dislike of him for being a spoiled rich boy. The teacher sits Kaiba next to Yugi, and they immediately hit it off when Kaiba notices his Duel Monsters card. He even invites Yugi and his friends to his disgustingly opulent mansion in order to look at his rare card collection and Duel Monsters Championship trophies. Jonuchi is obviously unimpressed, but while he was initially cool with him, now Honda is also getting annoyed at Kaiba, since Miho's starting to flirt with him because that's what she apparently does when there's potential personal gain. Afterwards, Kaiba asks Yugi about any of his own rare cards, and he lets slip that his grandpa has a really rare card himself. Kaiba asks to see it, and Jonuchi and Honda talk Yugi into it in an attempt to try and show Kaiba up for once. They head back to Yugi's place, where Sugoroku then shows the group his most valued possession, the Blue Eyes Dragon card. Kaiba is astonished to see it, but the others seem disappointed that it isn't diamond-studded or something, with how it was talked up by Yugi. Sugoroku then goes on to explain how it was such a powerful card that its production was stopped, making it incredibly rare. Imagine what they would do if they saw the real-life TCG. Ow, second rule, sorry. Regardless, Kaiba then plops down a big honkin' briefcase packed full of Duel Monsters cards and offers to trade all of them for the Blue Eyes Dragon, which Sugoroku promptly turns down flat. He then tells Kaiba and the others that it's his most prized possession not because it's rare, but because it's been given to him by his dear friend in America, nostalgia, you know the rest. Sugoroku then adds that Kaiba should also treasure each and every card in his briefcase, and Kaiba relents after admitting his mistake. Kaiba leaves, and the others now have a much higher opinion of Sugoroku after that admittedly epic exchange. Though I don't know about Miho hugging him like that, he's already proven himself a perverted old man once before. The next day, Jonuchi and Honda are picking up Duel Monsters in an attempt to try to beat Kaiba, though neither will admit that that's the reason they're doing so. Kaiba then shows up and asks Yugi about seeing the Blue Eyes Dragon again, having called him about it the night before. Yugi then brings the card out, which Sugoroku let him borrow, and hands it to Kaiba for him to look at. While handing it back though, Kaiba then drops the card, then secretly switches it with a counterfeit he had made, something which Yugi seems not to notice, but Jonuchi and Honda do. On the way home though, Yugi senses something is off with the card, but doesn't have time to dwell on it as Anzu shows up and mentions that Jonuchi and Honda said they were planning on challenging Kaiba, which he was unaware of. Back on the action rooftop, Jonuchi and Honda confront Kaiba about the counterfeit switch, but Kaiba acts just like the cocky bastard we all know and love. Jonuchi tries to hit him, but gets stopped by the suits from earlier, who promptly beat the crap out of him and Honda. Yugi arrives just in time to witness the aftermath, and Kaiba warns Yugi not to believe Jonuchi and Honda's lies. That turns out to not be necessary, however, as Yugi already knows that Kaiba switched the cards, but believed that Kaiba's conscience would lead him to return the card anyway, since he also apparently loves games. He begs him to return his grandpa's card since his heart is in the card, to which Kaiba says that cards have no heart, and sixes goons on Yugi despite having no benefit to doing so. Seriously, he doesn't have anything to gain from beating him up since he already has what he wants. And Yugi clearly doesn't pose a threat to him at his own current stature. The only thing that this accomplishes is a plot-convenient reason to activate the puzzle so that the plot can... Oh. Well anyway, Yami challenges Kaiba to a duel after knocking the suits, with the twist being that when a card is destroyed in the game, it is destroyed in real life. Oh, also the monsters are real and completely fucking terrifying, but that's normal. While Yami was able to gain an early lead due to this new feature, Kaiba comes back quickly with his deadly battle ox, Minotaurus, who seems unstoppable with its powerful growth card decimating everything Yami can put up. That is, of course, until Yami draws and plays the Summon Skull/Demon, one of the legendarily powerful monsters that commonly wins games single-handedly. In the face of this, Kaiba decides to top-deck the stolen Blue Eyes from his pocket and immediately plays it. However, this ends up doing fuck all as the Blue Eyes is conflicted as its will to fight is clashing with its loyalty to Sugoroku, resulting in it destroying itself. Following that, Yami then plays Monster Reborn, Revive the Dead, bringing back the destroyed Blue Eyes back to his field despite the card dissolving into the ether just moments before. Kaiba, realizing he's up a creek, then decides that his only option is to force a draw, playing his Gremlin card in the mountain to split the land in two, destroying them both and escaping in the confusion. I believe we just witnessed his first screw the rules I have green hair moment. Yami is impressed by Kaiba's skill and reclaims the Blue Eyes dragon to return to his grandfather. Kaiba, for his part, is furious that his duel ended in a draw that he caused, and swears vengeance against Yugi, claiming he won't rest until he suffers for his humiliation. I'm sure that's all safe and fine and good, though. Thoughts? Now that's more like it. That's what I've been looking for since episode 1. Good knockdown drag-out nostalgia with a noticeably darker tone which doesn't take it too far into disgusting territory. Sure, there were a couple points where it took an unnecessarily violent approach, but compared to the last two episodes, this was pretty much tame by comparison. Most of this was due to Kaiba just being Kaiba, not just for his signature snark being a welcome change of pace, but also because he almost never directly committed anything excessively heinous. Most of that was the work of his goons, which doesn't absolve him of the guilt, but that one degree of separation helps to make him a much better antagonist all around. This is why nobody ever boos Kaiba. They want to see more despite him objectively being a total asshat. Speaking of which, I feel like I also have to mention Jonuchi also got some major improvements since the last two episodes as well. Granted, he was basically working on rock bottom reputation after the last two, but I do appreciate that he didn't grab a shovel in this episode. For the first time in the series, we finally get to see the tough and noble guy we know him to be as opposed to the spiteful dick he's been up until now. He's still a bit too hyper-masculine for my taste, but it's not entirely out of character for him, especially in this part of the series. Honestly, Honda was probably worse off than Jonuchi in this episode, and his role was, as usual, so incredibly minor that it can easily be ignored. There were also some other minor redemptions in this episode for Sugoroku, Miho, and even Yami, so it was a great performance from the cast all around. Other than that, everything else is pretty solid. The nostalgia is strong, the story is awesome, and the action was pretty badass at times, if a bit contrived. I'll give this one 10 stars. Not a perfect score, mind you, but a very good result nonetheless. Trivia. Let's start with that whole splitting the land battle ox crap that Kaiba pulled. Thanks to this little stunt, this episode holds the distinction of being the only time a shadow game was played in which a loser was not punished, seeing as there was none. Well, if you really want to get technical, a couple of the Orichalcos duels could fall under this category too, but they weren't proper shadow games, so I don't think they should count. However, this distinction only applies to the anime, as Kaiba just straight up lost his duel against Yami once Blue Eyes showed up, resulting in Yami inflicting him with the Experience of Death penalty game, where he hallucinates being brutally murdered by his own monsters. This is actually a recurring penalty game, as once Kaiba recovers, he engineers a way to simulate this experience using his solid vision technology, and ends up using it against Yugi and his crew when they meet for a second time. He also mentions that tests of this penalty game cause irreparable insanity to occur in the average person after 10 minutes of exposure, so he was definitely out for blood in this series. You may also be wondering about why the card backing looks so different to what it ended up being in later incarnations. Turns out that this strange design is meant to represent the initials for the name of the game. But wait, you may ask, the name of the game is Duel Monsters and is clearly an MW on the cards. Well, that's because in the original Japanese manga, the game Duel Monsters used to be known by the name of Magic and Wizards, hence the MW on the back. Obviously, they had to change it in subsequent iterations due to copyright against Magic the Gathering, a card game by Wizards of the Coast, but it was already too late to change the image of the card backing by that point. What I want to know is why they didn't just call it Monster World if that was the case. It would have fit much better and would have matched the MW initials to avoid any more confusion. Maybe they were afraid of a Pokemon copyright strike or something. Other tidbits include that Miho was added once again, and that this chapter happened way later in the manga than the anime, but none of these were particularly worth mentioning. Lastly, for the interesting trivia, this... sorry, we're gonna need to zoom in a bit for this one. Little more. Ah, perfect. This blink and you'll miss it Easter egg is the only time that Dark Magician ever appears in the entire Toei anime outside of the opening theme. Yeah, it's strange to think about, but Yugi never actually uses his ace monster at any point in the anime. He does eventually use him in the movie, which is often treated as an extra episode of the Toei anime, but it's kind of a sketchy canon, and I personally wouldn't count it as such. Okay. I wasn't expecting a huge turnout or anything, but I thought I would get at least some interest in the tournament I spent a lot of time and effort and money trying to host. However, as you can clearly see, not a single person has signed up in the months that it's been since signups were opened. My already existing Patreon started the process of signing up, but he never submitted his deck list and therefore hasn't finished the process, so I can't even claim him a winner by default. So I'm gonna give myself one last chance to try and save face. If you want to join the tournament but don't want to or don't have the ability to join my Patreon, then all you need to do is DM me on Discord if you're on a server that I'm on as well. If you're not on such a server, I have a handy link to one in the description that you can use for free. Once you've DM'd me, I will then send you a temporary link to my server where you can complete the sign-up process. Since I won't be getting any income, I will be cutting back on the prizes as a result, so only the winner will receive a playmat. But if I get enough players, I might end up still getting the discount codes out as well. Signups will extend to the end of November, but this is the last extension that I will do for this before giving up, so this is your last chance to join. Now that we're riding the high of that last episode, this series is really starting to pick up steam. Shame about Honda though. Hopefully he can get some time to shine in the next episode. Next time on PTDevil's Yu-Gi-Oh! Journey. Theft, Rare Watch Battle. I guess they don't make medicine for stupidity after all.
It's not a game. It's real. Everything he just said is the truth. If I die in the game, I'll die in real life.